Chapter 31:13. This news was specially spread by Chu Feihu. With all the alchemists and doctors as his helpers, this news could be said to have spread abnormally fast, and it was completely from Chu Feihu's point of view. It was as if Bailey Hongzhuang had just arrived and did not follow the rules, thinking that she had some ability and wanted to challenge the authoritative alchemist of the entire demon refining tower. Chu Feihu saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was too arrogant, so he could not help but want to teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson. Regarding this news, people with discerning eyes knew that this was probably the result of the alchemists and doctors collectively pressuring number 18. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang did not do anything before. It was the alchemists and doctors who requested to prohibit the sale of Bailey Hongzhuang's healing medicine. Today, as soon as Bailey Hongzhuang said that she would continue to sell the medicine, this matter happened. Most likely, it was Chu Feihu who took the initiative to find trouble. However, everyone also had a suspicious attitude towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang came to the demon refining tower, her behavior had always been very mysterious. Until now, no one knew her true face. Xiao Yihan inexplicably helped. Lu Mingxiu inexplicably suffered 2 losses at Bailey Hongzhuang's hands, and now the alchemists and doctors collectively came to find trouble. Everyone could not help but sigh. This Bailey Hongzhuang was really a troublemaker. It seemed that no matter where she went, trouble would follow. Therefore, everyone felt that perhaps Bailey Hongzhuang was an extremely arrogant person. Otherwise, she would not have caused so much trouble. Chu Feihu and number 18 are at odds. This time, we really have a good show to watch. Chu Feihu's alchemy skills are very powerful. All the alchemists in the demon refining tower are led by him. In my opinion, there is no suspense at all in this competition. Number 18 cannot be Chu Feihu's opponent. Perhaps this so-called competition was just deliberately fabricated by Chu Feihu and the others to show fairness. Number 18 might not have agreed at all. Now that this rumor has spread, number 18 has no choice but to agree. Everyone had stayed in the magic refining tower for quite some time. They had seen many methods of using pressure to force the other party to agree, and the people who were best at using this method were the alchemists. That's true. Number 18 is really unlucky. She just wants to sell some healing medicine, but there are so many people looking for trouble. Everyone in the MOU pagoda sighed endlessly. Almost everyone had already believed that Bailey Hongzhuang had to get out of the MOU pagoda this time, unless she could shake Chu Feihu's identity. But this was tantamount to a fantasy. After Bailey Hongzhuang heard this rumor, a hint of interest appeared on her calm face. Sure enough, Chu Feihu wants to use this opportunity to force us to leave. This Chu Feihu is really shameless. He was clearly the one who came looking for trouble. Yet he spread the rumor that we took the initiative to provoke him. It makes it seem like he was forced to make a move, showing the demeanor of an expert. Shang Wanning was secretly speechless. This Chu Feihu was already so old, yet he still used such methods on them. It really made people speechless. Chapter 31:14. The 3 beasts looked at the calm expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, and felt a burst of admiration in their hearts. If it were anyone else, they would have been infuriated long ago. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were still as calm as ever, as if all of this had nothing to do with them. As soon as this news spread out, the upper echelons of the demon refining tower were inevitably alarmed because of its great influence. When Steward Qin found out that Bailey Hongzhuang actually planned to fight Chu Feihu head-on, he felt a burst of helplessness in his heart. He really didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would fight Chu Feihu head-on. Previously, when a group of alchemists and doctors carried out a collective protest, he felt very helpless. However, these old fellows usually all had stubborn appearances, relying on their own ability to be extremely arrogant. Most importantly, with so many of them working together, they were bound together for good or ill, which made it very difficult for the demon refining tower. Even he felt a headache when he looked at this group of people, so every time they argued, he would pretend that he didn't see anything. Otherwise, these guys would definitely anger him to death. This matter was clear in everyone's heart. Chu Feihu and the others were simply unreasonable. Bailey Hongzhuang had only produced a healing medicine that was selling well. Just because it blocked their interests, they were asked to stop selling it. Now, these guys were becoming more and more arrogant, and their actions were becoming more and more arrogant. If Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't alone, or she could show more value, Steward Qin wouldn't mind mediating a bit. However, the gap in strength between the two sides was too great. It didn't make sense for him to stand on Bailey Hongzhuang's side. On the contrary, he would be disturbed by those guys' endless chatter, so he could only turn a blind eye to it. If a doctor wanted to compete with an alchemist, this was simply an impossible competition. As everyone knew, becoming a doctor was much easier than becoming an alchemist. This was because alchemists needed to have enough talent to reach this step, and doctors needed to be serious enough. Just on this threshold, alchemists had to be higher. Usually, the value of the pills refined by alchemists was much higher than that of the pills refined by doctors. This was the difference between the two. The healing medicine made by Bailey Hongzhuang was indeed much better than that made by ordinary doctors, but alchemists had more outstanding pill formulas. Once Chu Feihu got serious, how could Bailey Hongzhuang compare? Therefore, Steward Qin could only sigh after knowing all of this. He admired Bailey Hongzhuang, but he wouldn't help. The only thing that made him glad was that he was fast enough to get his hands on Bailey Hongzhuang's healing medicine formula. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang left now, they wouldn't lose much of their losses. After hearing this rumor, Sweet Dream was completely dumbfounded. As soon as she knew about Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude, she knew that this matter wouldn't develop well. However, she really couldn't understand why Bailey Hongzhuang would agree to compete with Chu Feihu. Based on her understanding of Bailey Hongzhuang shouldn't be such an impulsive and overconfident person. Wasn't this forcing herself to a dead end? Chapter 31:15. Sweet Dream could not help but look for Bailey Hongzhuang. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's door was already hung with a Do Not Disturb sign, which made her even more flustered. Sweet Dream, you don't have to worry about D-Bay. Since the situation has already developed to this point, there is no turning back. Why don't we continue like this? Shang Guanying was the first to speak after seeing Sweet Dream. She did not need to think to guess Sweet Dream's intentions. If we fail, won't you all leave the Demon Refining Island? Sweet Dream asked anxiously. Seeing Sweet Dream like this, Shang Guanying sighed inwardly. If Sweet Dream really fell in love with Bailey Hongzhuang, it would be a big problem. Although they had some conflicts with Sweet Dream before, Sweet Dream had always been helping them after everything that had happened. They were not willing to hurt such a girl. If it really comes to that, then there is no other way. Let's just leave, Shang Guanying said slowly. However, D-Bay might not necessarily lose. There are many unexpected things in this world. Sweet Dream's eyes could not help but darken when she saw how indifferent Shang Guanying was when she spoke of leaving. She had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would leave. It was only after Shang Guanying's reminder that she remembered that no one could stay in the Demon Refining Tower forever. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three could leave at any time. What is young Master D doing now? He is busy preparing the healing medicine to compete with Chu Feihu. I'm afraid he won't come out for the next 2 days. Sweet Dream nodded. I see. Seeing Sweet Dream's dispirited figure leave, Xiren could not help but poke his head out with a helpless expression. The falling flowers are willing, but the heartless brook is heartless. Beichun, do you want to consider giving your Hongzhuang to Sweet Dream? I don't mind giving you away, Beichun said lightly. Bailey Hongzhuang was busy refining pills at this moment. The entire room had been wrapped up by her essence power. The movements outside could not be heard, so she could refine pills with peace of mind. There were many types of pills in the area of healing. Bailey Hongzhuang also had many pill formulas. However, she needed to consider what kind of pill Chu Feihu would choose to refine. She only needed to refine a pill that had a better effect than Chu Feihu's. If she were to use precious pills in order to obtain victory, she would indeed be able to obtain victory, but it would not be worth it. She believed that Chu Feihu would not refine pills that were too valuable because that would be a loss to his own interests. But ever since she saw, for a while, gathering all the types of pills together, there were simply too many possibilities. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on Xiao He and Xiao Bai. She said, "Xiao He, Xiao Bai, I might need your help today." Hearing that they could be of use, Xiao He and Xiao Bai's eyes lit up and excitement flashed across their faces. "Master, do you want us to eavesdrop on Chu Feihu's plans?" Chapter 31:16. Master, don't worry. Leave such a small matter to us. Xiao He and Xiao Bai patted their chests and made a solemn vow. As long as they shrunk to their smallest size, no one would notice their existence. Furthermore, their cultivation was not weak at all. With Chu Feihu's cultivation, it was basically impossible for him to discover them. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently as the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. As long as she knew Chu Feihu's true intentions, she would be in an undefeatable position. Master, we'll be off then. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. Be careful. I'll wait for your good news. Don't worry, there won't be any problems. In the next second, Xiao He and Xiao Bai quickly shrunk their figures and turned into two small dots, one black and one white, as they slipped out through the crack in the door. Speaking of which, it was precisely because the residences of the pharmacists and doctors were open to the public that Bailey Hongzhuang was saved from a lot of trouble. She only needed to investigate to find out where Chu Feihu lived. She believed that Chu Feihu must have deliberately schemed to defeat her this time. Therefore, he should have started refining the pill a long time ago. Not long after, Xiao He and Xiao Bai returned. The two beasts' faces were brimming with excitement as they said, "Master, you've guessed correctly. Chu Feihu has already started refining the pill." "Do you know what pill he's refining?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Xiao He nodded. "I heard him talking to someone else. He said that he's refining the nourishment pill." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's deep and beautiful eyes flashed with understanding. "It seems that in order to be able to drive me out of the demon refining pagoda, he really spent a lot of money, huh?" The nourishment pill was a 5th-grade pill and was extremely valuable. It was definitely not an ordinary pill that Chu Feihu usually sold. Generally speaking, as long as the cultivator's injuries were not fatal, the cultivator would be able to recover quickly after taking the fusion replenishing pill. This kind of pill was normally equivalent to a life-saving pill, but Chu Feihu actually used it to compete with her. It seemed that not only did he want to chase Bailey Hongzhuang out, he also wanted to use this opportunity to tell everyone in the demon training tower that his true strength could not be underestimated. In this way, with Bailey Hongzhuang as a stepping stone, Chu Feihu's reputation in the demon refining pagoda would reach an unprecedented height. Sure enough, it was a good plan. "Master, what do you plan to do?" The three beasts looked worriedly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Chu Feihu was not an easy person to deal with. They must find a way to defeat Chu Feihu. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, "Since he wants to refine the thawing supplement pill, then let's refine the thawing supplement pill too. Let's see who can refine the best thawing supplement pill." "Won't it be very difficult to determine the victor like this?" Bai Shi asked worriedly. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was unfathomable. "Only then will there be suspense. This will also allow Chu Feihu to dig his own hole even deeper." Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, the three beasts could not help but look at each other. Every time their master showed this kind of expression, it meant that someone was going to be in for a bad time. Chu Feihu was still so pleased with himself. They were afraid that he would be in for a bad time in 3 days' time. Chapter 31:17. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Chu Feihu were in seclusion, concentrating on refining the fusion replenishing pill, this competition continued to ferment. The crowd's enthusiasm was not reduced at all because of Bailey Hongzhuang and Chu Feihu's seclusion. Instead, many people who wanted to see the world in chaos opened a bet at this time, betting on who would win in this competition between Chu Feihu and number 18. However, everyone's opinions were almost one-sided. Almost everyone believed that Chu Feihu would win without a doubt, So Chu Feihu's odds were abnormally low, and Bailey Hongzhuang's odds were shockingly high. Unfortunately, even if Bailey Hongzhuang's odds were shockingly high, there were still not many people who were willing to bet on Bailey Hongzhuang. When Di Beichen and the other two heard the news, they chose to bet on Bailey Hongzhuang without hesitation, and this bet was a heavy one. Di Beichen noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang's odds were 20-1, and Chu Feihu's odds were 1-0. 5. This kind of odds was too ironic, and many people even treated this as a joke. Therefore, Di Beichen did not hesitate to bet 10,000 spirit stones on Bailey Hongzhuang's victory. When everyone knew that someone had placed such a heavy bet on Bailey Hongzhuang, they were shocked. 10,000 spirit stones, that was a wealth that no one could ignore, and someone actually put on a bet that they would lose without a doubt. However, after Di Beichen took the lead, some people who wanted to take advantage of the situation also bet on Bailey Hongzhuang's victory, but the price was very low. I don't know who started the bet, but this odds are completely mocking Hongzhuang. Shangguan Yingying's face could not hide her anger. 20-0. 5. Doesn't this mean that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength is only 1/40th of Chu Feihu's? This is looking down on Bailey Hongzhuang too much. Who else could it be? Xiren patted Shangguan Yingying on the shoulder, comforting her not to be too angry. Isn't this good? With 20 times the odds, we can earn 200,000 spirit stones. Such a good way to earn money is not easy to come by. Who? Shangguan Yingying raised her eyebrows slightly. For a moment, she did not understand Xiren's deep meaning. If it had been an ordinary cultivator, everyone would have been certain that Chu Feihu would win, and this bet would not have been set up. There is only one reason why this bet could be set up. Chu Feihu's people did it on purpose. They want to use this method to build momentum and put more pressure on us. As alchemists and doctors, none of them are short of money. Even if you take out some spirit stones, they won't care. What they want is a complete victory. Di Beichen slowly explained. Hearing that, Shangguan Yingying finally understood. Oh, I see. No wonder you suppressed so many spirit stones together. It's their money, it's a waste not to earn it. Di Beichen smiled faintly. I think the situation is getting more and more tense. If Hongzhuang doesn't win this time, we won't be able to stay on the demonic refining island any longer. These guys are really troublesome when they cause trouble. Shangguan Yingying sighed. As the 3-day agreement was getting closer and closer, this matter became more and more popular. Now that things had developed to this point, there was no turning back. Chapter 31:18. Everyone believes that he won't fail. Once he fails, he'll fall from his pedestal. Xiren raised his eyebrows. I'm looking forward to seeing Chu Feihu's expression when the time comes. Shangguan Yingying saw that Di Beichen and Xiren weren't worried at all. She couldn't help but feel relieved. I just hope that they won't go back on their word. 200,000 spirit stones is a huge sum of money. They had concocted so many healing medicines, but they still hadn't earned that many spirit stones. As long as they got the 200,000 spirit stones, they would only need to cultivate in peace. They wouldn't need to compete with Chu Feihu and the others at all. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. When Bailey Hongzhuang opened the door, Di Beichen and the others were already waiting for her. They weren't the only ones. Sweet Dream had also rushed over early in the morning. Today's competition could be said to have attracted everyone's attention. Many people had already begun to pay attention to the movements of both sides. Are you ready? Di Beichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang with a charming smile. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She knew that because Sweet Dream was here, Di Beichen had to pay attention to his words. I'm ready. I can sell it directly. At this moment, Sweet Dream suddenly said, Young Master D, because this matter is a bit too sensational and there are too many people paying attention to it. The higher-ups have invited you and Master Chu to the counter to introduce the effects of the healing medicines you'll be competing in. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. There's such a request? Sweet Dream nodded. This matter was decided at the last minute. Master Chu has already agreed. But young Master D, if you don't want to, you can wear a mask. In the Devil Refining Tower, anyone who doesn't want to reveal their true appearance will do so. No one will find it strange. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. The three of them also told them with their eyes that they had just heard the news today. I understand, Bailey Hongzhuang replied, as a wisp of contemplation appeared in her clear eyes. At this point, was there any need for her to continue concealing her true appearance? She did not hide her appearance before Chu Feihu and the others, so there was no need for her to continue hiding before the people from the demon training tower. Because of her identity as an alchemist and doctor, other cultivators would not deliberately cause trouble for her. She, who lived here, did not have to worry about Lu Mingxiu causing trouble. This was also the reason why Chu Feihu and the others never hid their true appearances. If that's the case, then let's go directly, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Mr. D, aren't you going to wear a mask? Sweet Dream was a little surprised. She had already prepared a mask for Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. There's no need. Brother Bedchamber has already attracted so much attention. If I wear a mask, it'll make me look weak. Why don't I just go like this? Di Beichun and the others nodded as well. In fact, they only wanted to cultivate quietly from the very beginning. They had not thought about hiding their appearances when they were heading to the arena. They had only done so to avoid trouble after provoking Lu Mingxiu. Now that there was no trouble, there was no need to hide their appearances. Chapter 31:19. Although it was still early, many cultivators had already gathered near the counter. Everyone's faces flashed with interest. They hadn't seen such a lively scene in the Demon Refining Tower for a long time. Not only were the weaker cultivators here, but even Xiao Yihan and Lu Mingxiu had also appeared here. Of course, the main reason for this was that number 18 was too mysterious. Everyone wanted to see what kind of person she was. I wonder if number 18 will reveal her true identity today. It's been so long, and no one has been able to find out her true identity. It really makes people curious. I heard that number 18 and Chu Feihu will personally come here today. We'll definitely see her. This guy dares to challenge Chu Feihu, so he's very likely a powerful character. That's not necessarily true. Number 18 will definitely lose today. Isn't him coming here just a disgrace? Everyone was discussing animatedly. Compared to Chu Feihu, everyone clearly paid more attention to number 18. Not long after, Chu Feihu, a group of alchemists and doctors arrived at the counter. Fortunately, this place was spacious enough. Otherwise, with so many people gathered here, they wouldn't be able to squeeze in. Chu Feihu looked around and saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had actually appeared later than him. A hint of displeasure flashed through his eyes. Master Chu, number 18 definitely doesn't dare to compete with you directly, so she doesn't dare to appear now. At this time, someone's flattery made Chu Feihu reveal a satisfied expression. That's not necessarily true. When she provoked me before, her attitude was very arrogant. She didn't look like she was afraid of me at all. That's because she didn't expect you to be serious with her. That's why she's really afraid. The smile on Chu Feihu's face gradually widened. Today, he really did come to see Bailey Hongzhuang make a fool of herself. A little brat wanted to compete with him. He would definitely make him lose so badly that he wouldn't even be able to lift his head. After everyone present noticed Chu Feihu's arrogance, they were even more certain of the outcome of this competition. They were certain that number 18 really didn't have the guts to appear. It's already late, and number 18 still hasn't appeared. Does she not dare to come? If she doesn't dare to come, she should have said so earlier. As long as she gets out of the Demon Refining Tower, there's no need to waste everyone's time. Some young people really won't shed tears until they see the coffin. What's the use of knowing fear now? The pharmacists and doctors behind Chu Feihu began to ridicule him one after another. They didn't want Bailey Hongzhuang to not appear like this. If that happened, it wouldn't be fun today. As more and more people mocked Bailey Hongzhuang, the smile on Chu Feihu's face became more and more brilliant. He hadn't come out for a long time. So many people didn't know how powerful he was. Taking advantage of today's opportunity to show off, he missed this feeling very much. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others approached the counter, they saw this scene. Chu Feihu, who was like a moon surrounded by stars, was extremely conspicuous. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed him almost immediately. Chu Feihu's face turned cold when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang. "You're finally here." Chapter 31:20. It can't be. Which one of the four is number 18? She looks so young and doesn't look like it at all. A cultivator couldn't help but sigh. According to their guess, this number 18 shouldn't be young. Otherwise, why would she challenge Chu Feihu? However, the four young people in front of them all looked to be in their 20s. This age was definitely considered young on Penglai Island. I don't know, but I think this number 18 should be a man. It's just that I don't know who he is exactly. Previously, I thought there might be a chance to turn things around. Now, I can almost conclude that Chu Feihu will definitely win this competition. The gap is really too big. Everyone sighed and shook their heads. Although this strength wasn't completely related to age, it was still related to a lot in general. Judging from Chu Feihu's age, he was at least a few decades older than number 18. This gap wasn't something that could be easily made up for, not to mention that Chu Feihu was also an alchemist. Xiao Yihan was also sizing up Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four with great interest. Speaking of which, it was strange. Logically speaking, with Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four, he should be able to determine the leader at a glance. However, these four people walking together didn't seem to be lacking in any way. It was impossible to tell who was number 18 at all. The reason why this characteristic appeared was because these four people were all very outstanding. It could be said that they were evenly matched. Xiao Yihan raised his eyebrows slightly. So far, they only knew about number 18's reputation. The others were all unknown. He was a little curious about this team. Speaking of which, the reason why number 18 ended up like this in the Magic Training Tower had a lot to do with him. If it wasn't for the conflict between him and Lu Mingxiu, this healing medicine wouldn't have become so popular so quickly. However, he also knew in his heart that even if he didn't buy it back then, it wouldn't be long before this healing medicine would enter the eyes of everyone. On the contrary, because of his participation, number 18 had provoked Lu Mingxiu this kind of trouble. Lu Mingxiu's gaze followed the footsteps of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three closely. His gaze kept shifting as he tried to determine who was the real number 18. This damn number 18 had made him lose face twice in a short period of time, and his reputation had been greatly affected. This time, he could finally see her true colors. "You're finally here. I thought you wouldn't dare to come." Chu Feihu's gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. His aged and arrogant face revealed a trace of mockery. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang still had the guts to come forward. Her courage was not bad. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. "Master Chu, you must be joking. It's not a big deal. Why wouldn't I dare to come?" With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, everyone immediately knew that she was the real number 18, but what she said made everyone suck in a breath of cold air, and their faces suddenly became extraordinarily wonderful. Chapter 31:21. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's arrogant appearance as usual, Chu Feihu couldn't help but snort coldly. "I hope you can continue to be so proud in a while." "Grandmaster Chu, don't worry. I will not let you down." Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly, as if she didn't hear the ridicule in Chu Feihu's words. She was as calm as ever. Chu Feihu's eyes narrowed slightly. This Bailey Hongzhuang was really sharp-tongued. If he continued to argue with Bailey Hongzhuang, he would only lose his own face, but it was also very unpleasant for him to swallow this breath. When Steward Qin saw that the sparks between Chu Feihu and Bailey Hongzhuang were getting more and more intense, he couldn't help but stand up and say, "Since the two of you are already here, why don't you take out the healing medicine you have prepared? When the time comes, we can also judge the outcome based on the sales situation and the real effect." Originally, Steward Qin didn't intend to participate in this matter at all, but Chu Feihu had always strongly requested him to come out and testify. He pushed away a little, but found that it was useless. After all, there were so many alchemists and doctors here. He couldn't help but give the other party face, so he could only stand up. Although he had already determined that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three would definitely leave after this matter, he still admired Bailey Hongzhuang very much. Now, He was willing to be this peacemaker. Seeing that Steward Qin had intervened, Chu Feihu retracted his previous emotions and said, "All right then, I will take out the pills that I have refined." In the next second, Chu Feihu handed over a Qinquan bag to Steward Qin. Steward Qin took out a dozen white porcelain bottles from the Qinquan bag in front of everyone's eyes and placed them together on the counter. As more than a dozen white porcelain bottles appeared at the same time, everyone's eyes were immediately attracted to the white porcelain bottles, and a strong sense of anticipation appeared in their eyes. Steward Qin looked at these white porcelain bottles, and a light flashed in his eyes. Based on his understanding of Chu Feihu, the value of the pills that the latter took out at this time would definitely not be bad. However, he didn't know what kind of pills they were. "Grandmaster Chu, I wonder what kind of pills are in this white porcelain bottle?" Steward Qin asked the question in everyone's heart. Hearing Steward Qin's question, a proud expression quickly appeared on Chu Feihu's face. This white porcelain bottle contains a 5th-grade pill, fusion supplement pill. As soon as these words came out, the cultivators present all cried out in surprise. They were not unfamiliar with the name's name, supplement pill. This was a supplement pill's name. This was a very, for cultivators who often encountered danger. Normally, it was not that everyone could not see the fusion supplement pill in a magic refining tower, but every time, it could only be encountered by chance and not sought. Refining this kind of pill required a lot of time and effort. In addition, a 5th-grade alchemist was a relatively rare existence, so everyone might not have the opportunity to buy it. This time, Chu Feihu actually took out so many harmonizing, nourishing pills at once. Naturally, everyone could not help but be surprised. Very soon, their eyes flashed with a touch of passion. They could not help but want to immediately take the harmonizing, nourishing pills. Chapter 31-22. After Chu Feihu mentioned the fusion replenishing pill, his gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, revealing a hint of provocation and pride. This time, in order to ensure that he would be able to defeat Bailey Hongzhuang, he had been working hard to refine the fusion replenishing pill for the past 3 days. Even he had a high chance of failure when refining a pill of this level, but in order to show his true strength, he had risked his life. Fortunately, he still had some stock in his Qinquan bag. Now that he had taken them out together, just this amount alone was enough to shock people. He wanted to see if Bailey Hongzhuang could continue to maintain her previous arrogance at this point. Presumably, she would be scared out of her wits by the fusion replenishing pill that he had taken out. However, when Chu Feihu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, he found that Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was extremely calm. Although there was a hint of surprise, it was far from being afraid. This made him frown. Was it because Bailey Hongzhuang's disguise was too good, or was it because she had a card up her sleeve? Master Chu actually took out so many fusion replenishing pills this time. This time, number 18 will definitely lose. How can there be a doctor who can make a healing medicine with the same effect as the fusion replenishing pill? This is simply impossible. It was unknown which cultivator said this, but all the cultivators present couldn't help but nod their heads. At the level of a 5th-tier alchemist, there was no way for a doctor to compare with an alchemist. This was already a dead end. After seeing this scene, Sweet Ming's face was also ugly to the extreme. Although she also felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's chances of winning were very small, she always had a glimmer of hope. But now this glimmer of hope had been completely destroyed when she thought of Bailey Hongzhuang being forced to leave the magic training pagoda. She couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. This was not the result she wanted to see. Steward Qin's gaze also fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. He felt a little sorry for Bailey Hongzhuang, but unfortunately, it was already an irreversible situation. However, Steward Qin also noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's indifferent expression, and his thoughts couldn't help but pause. Could it be that this Bailey Hongzhuang still had some tricks up her sleeve? With his eyesight, he could tell that Bailey Hongzhuang was not pretending to be calm, but was really confident. This was interesting. Number 18. What healing medicine have you prepared? Steward Qin looked curiously at Bailey Hongzhuang and slowly asked. Following Steward Qin's words, everyone's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Now, the outcome would be decided on the medicine that Bailey Hongzhuang had been prepared. Although everyone had already determined the result in their hearts, they still wanted to know what Bailey Hongzhuang had prepared. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly, then handed a Qinkuan bag to Steward Qin and said, "The healing medicine I prepared is here." Steward Qin took the Qinkuan bag, and then 30 white porcelain bottles appeared on the other side of the counter. Seeing these 30 white porcelain bottles, everyone couldn't help but be shocked. In terms of numbers, Bailey Hongzhuang had the upper hand. Unfortunately, everyone valued the effect, not the quantity. After all, the time it took for a doctor to concoct a healing medicine was much shorter than for an alchemist to refine a medicinal pill. When Chu Feihu saw Bailey Hongzhuang take out 30 white porcelain bottles, not only did he not panic at all, the smile on his face deepened. Chapter 31:23. In the same amount of time, the more precious the healing medicine was, the less it would be produced. Bailey Hongzhuang was able to produce so many of them. If she wanted to defeat him with quantity, it would be a bit too ridiculous. Steward Qin opened the white porcelain bottle and took a look. A refreshing medicinal fragrance floated into his nose. A hint of surprise immediately appeared in his eyes, because he felt that the medicinal fragrance of the medicinal pill that Bailey Hongzhuang took out was exactly the same as the medicinal fragrance of Chu Feihu's fusion supplement pill. It was even stronger than Chu Feihu's fusion supplement pill. Number 18. I wonder what kind of medicinal pill you are refining. Steward Qin couldn't help but ask. The curiosity in his heart was much stronger than before. Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent and slowly said, "It just so happens that it's the same as Master Chu. It's also a fusion supplement pill." As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, the atmosphere seemed to freeze for a moment. Then, everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock, their eyes filled with disbelief. Did I hear wrongly? She also took out a fusion supplement pill? This is too much of a coincidence. If it's really like this, then how can we determine the winner? Isn't this number 18 a doctor? How could she take out a fusion supplement pill? Voices of disbelief surrounded Bailey Hongzhuang. The situation that had been decided in everyone's hearts seemed to have begun to change at this moment, because the change in the situation was completely beyond everyone's expectations. Chu Feihu also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock. His face, which had always been very indifferent, could not be maintained at this moment. He said coldly, "This is impossible." Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Chu Feihu indifferently and noticed the anger that quickly emerged on the latter's face. The corners of her lips rose slightly and said, "What's impossible about this? You're also selling medicinal pills?" Chu Feihu snorted coldly. "Is this possible? Could it be that you got it from someone else in order to win?" Hearing Chu Feihu's words, everyone's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. Speaking of which, it was really possible. With Bailey Hongzhuang's age, it was not very convincing to say that she could refine so many harmony-replenishing pills. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Grandmaster Chu's words are really interesting. In this entire magic refining tower, aside from me, all the other pharmacists and doctors are your people. Where do I go to get them? Chu Feihu's lips twitched a little. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's words were full of sarcasm, he had to admit that it was true. All the pharmacists and doctors in the magic refining tower could not help Bailey Hongzhuang. If it was said that Bailey Hongzhuang had so many harmonizing, replenishing pills on her, it would be too exaggerated. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang was a doctor and did not lack money, it would not be so easy to obtain so many harmonizing, replenishing pills. Number 18. Don't try to be mysterious. I advise you to tell the truth. Otherwise, after this matter is exposed, you will be the one who will look bad. At this time, an alchemist standing behind Chu Feihu could not help but warn. Steward Qin and Sweet Dream both looked at the development of the situation in astonishment. It had to be said that the harmonizing, replenishing pills that Bailey Hongzhuang took out had really surprised them. This was completely out of the ordinary. Chapter 31:24. Bailey Hongzhuang swept her cold gaze across the pill refiner. Her young and handsome face was calm and indifferent. What do you mean by deliberately mystifying things? I'm deliberately mystifying things by taking out the fusion replenishing pill. Grandmaster Chu has also taken out a fusion replenishing pill. Why don't you say that he's deliberately mystifying things? As the voice of Bailey Hongzhuang fell, the alchemists and doctors present also had a feeling of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. They had suspected Bailey Hongzhuang because Bailey Hongzhuang could not possibly possess such power. However, they were well aware of Chu Feihu's power. You're only a doctor, yet you're taking out a pill and telling us that you're the one who refined it. Don't you think that's a joke? Chu Feihu stared indifferently at Bailey Hongzhuang. He could not make sense of the latter's actions today. He had intended to ridicule Bailey Hongzhuang and have her obediently scram out of the magic tower. However, he never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would come up with such a bizarre reason. It was impossible for him not to ridicule her. However, the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang's words shocked everyone present. When have I ever said that I'm not a pill refiner? As soon as she said this, everyone was shocked. The originally noisy counter suddenly fell silent. Everyone's eyes fell upon Bailey Hongzhuang in unison. Their eyes were filled with astonishment and disbelief. Bewitching and the other two stood behind Bailey Hongzhuang with indifferent expressions. They had appeared here today with the intention of telling everyone about Bailey Hongzhuang's other identity. At the same time, they wanted to let Chu Feihu know that age was not all that mattered. The young Bailey Hongzhuang was not inferior to him in this aspect. Sweet Dream was so shocked that she almost cried out. She quickly covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes widened as she stared in disbelief at the handsome figure in the crowd. This was too hard to believe. She had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang had another identity. An alchemist, this identity was even more precious than a doctor. If Bailey Hongzhuang was not lying, then she could understand why Bailey Hongzhuang would agree to compete with Chu Feihu. Xiao Yihan and Chu Feihu's expressions also changed slightly. Bailey Hongzhuang's words had surprised everyone too much. Steward Qin's expression also became exceptionally wonderful. He felt that he had already thought highly of Bailey Hongzhuang, but now it seemed that he had still underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang. If Bailey Hongzhuang, Chu Feihu, then Bailey Hongzhuang mean that Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, Chu Feihu was already so old, and there was little room for him to improve in the future. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was a genius alchemist, not to mention that she also had the dual identity of a doctor. Chu Feihu was already dumbfounded, his mind constantly replaying the words that Bailey Hongzhuang had just said. It was just a simple sentence, but the content was so overwhelming that it was hard to digest. You are an alchemist? Chu Feihu raised his voice and asked. His calm and arrogant face was now filled with shock. He could no longer be as indifferent as before. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. That's right. Chapter 31-25. Chu Feihu had been an alchemist for so many years, so he understood the situation of alchemists very well. He knew that there were indeed some genius alchemists who could refine fifth-grade pills at a young age, but he didn't believe that Bailey Hongzhuang had the dual identity of an alchemist and a doctor. If Bailey Hongzhuang really had such an identity, then she couldn't have lived on the second floor before, and Steward Qin's attitude couldn't have been like this. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows, and the corner of her mouth hooked up into a playful smile. She said, Grandmaster Chu's words are really funny. What I need to prove with my own ability. Ever since I came to the residential area of the alchemists and doctors, Grandmaster Chu has been pressuring me step by step, forcing me to this point. I have already competed with you as you wished. If you continue to rely on your seniority, aren't you a bit shameless? Her cold voice was indifferent and cold, and it was filled with a faint anger that was not concealed at all. Everyone's expression changed, and many people sucked in a breath of cold air. Their eyes were filled with horror. Relying on seniority, Bailey Hongzhuang actually said that Chu Feihu was relying on his seniority. This was not giving Chu Feihu any face at all. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's words also revealed a lot of information. Sure enough, she didn't want to participate in this competition on her own initiative, but Chu Feihu forced her to this point step by step. At this point, everyone present tacitly believed in Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, only Chu Feihu had the ability to force Bailey Hongzhuang to participate. If it was only Bailey Hongzhuang who provoked Chu Feihu would not have agreed at all. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chu Feihu's eyes quickly burst into flames, and his body couldn't help but tremble. The anger on his face seemed to be able to burn Bailey Hongzhuang to ashes at any time. What nonsense are you talking about? In the past 3 days, no matter how they spread the rumors, Bailey Hongzhuang had never responded. He thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was tactful enough to know that she had to swallow this loss. But this damn guy actually said such words in front of everyone today. Wasn't this a slap to his face? A single sentence of taking advantage of his seniority was enough to pour a basin of dirty water on his head. What's more, Chu Feihu had stayed in the Demon Tower for so many years, and no one had ever dared to say that he was relying on his seniority. What I said is the truth. Whether it's Grandmaster Chu or everyone else here, they all know it very well, right? Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders, looking like she had a clear conscience. Chu Feihu, who was already extremely angry, became even angrier after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance. He reached out with both hands, as if he couldn't wait to kill Bailey Hongzhuang. When Steward Qin saw this scene, he hurriedly stood up and said, "Master Chu, calm down. There's so many people here. It's not good to affect your image." Hearing this, the corner of Chu Feihu's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Affect my image? His image had already been destroyed by Bailey Hongzhuang just now. Steward Qin, tell me what to do about this matter. Chu Feihu's chest heaved up and down as he glared angrily at Steward Qin. Obviously, if Steward Qin didn't give him an explanation today, he would definitely not let this matter go easily. Chapter 31:26. Steward Qin felt extremely helpless in his heart. If possible, he really didn't want to get involved in this matter. Master Chu, today's main purpose is to witness the competition between you and number 18. The most important thing is to see the effects of the pills. You mean you don't care about this matter? Chu Feihu felt that he was about to explode from anger. He had been in the Demon Refining Tower for so many years. Who would dare to provoke his dignity? Now, a new brat actually dared to provoke him and ruin his reputation in front of everyone. He simply could not tolerate it. Steward Qin's face was filled with a thick smile as he said, "Master Chu, didn't you and number 18 already agree on this? Whoever loses will leave the Demon Refining Tower. Why are you so angry about this now? You have been in our Demon Refining Tower for so many years, and we all know what kind of person you are." The smile in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes gradually deepened. This Steward Qin was indeed a shrewd person. His words could be said to be watertight, and different people would have different meanings when they heard it. Everyone was clear about Chu Feihu's character. However, what kind of person he was that was a matter of opinion. After being advised by Steward Qin, Chu Feihu's expression became a little better. He said, "Steward Qin, I will not bother about this matter for the time being on your account. Once the results are out, I will definitely make her scram out of the Demon Refining Tower as soon as possible." Steward Qin nodded repeatedly. "Since this is your personal agreement, you naturally have to abide by it." Everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was able to make Chu Feihu angry like this, and they secretly sighed in their hearts. Sure enough, both sides were not easy to deal with. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was young, she was not a good person to offend. Even Chu Feihu was not able to get any benefits from her. Steward Qin, both sides have refined the nourishing pill. How should we determine the victor? At this time, Sweet Dream could not help but ask. Originally, they could directly determine the final result based on the different pills that both sides had refined. However, the pills that both sides had taken out were exactly the same, so there was no need to make an assertion. Could it be that the final result was a draw? As his voice fell, everyone also thought of this problem. Since it was the same medicinal pill, then there was no way to determine the result. For a moment, Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a deeper meaning. If all of this was done deliberately by Bailey Hongzhuang, then they could only say that Bailey Hongzhuang was extraordinarily smart. Previously, Chu Feihu and Bailey Hongzhuang had agreed that whoever lost would leave the demonic tower. However, they had never mentioned how a draw would be handled. As such, the words they had spoken before naturally did not count. Steward Sheen could not help but be stunned. He really did not pay attention to this question. In this way, it was indeed impossible to determine the outcome. Chu Feihu's brows couldn't help but frown. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang, his eyes were filled with a bit of complexity. He even began to wonder if there was a traitor on their side. Otherwise, how could the pill that Bailey Hongzhuang took out be exactly the same as his? There were so many types of healing pills. He did not believe that Bailey Hongzhuang would coincidentally choose the same one as him. Furthermore, there was a huge problem with Bailey Hongzhuang being able to take out so many nourishing pills. Chapter 31:27. It is indeed very difficult to determine the victor between the two pills. Steward Sheen's eyes flashed with a hint of thought, and his expression also revealed a bit of embarrassment. Why don't we conclude this competition as a draw? As soon as Steward Sheen said the idea of a draw, Chu Feihu immediately refused. No, there must be a victor between her and me. I will never accept the result of a draw. In order to drive Bailey Hongzhuang out of the magic refining pagoda, he had not only left the mountain, but also spent so much effort. If he could not drive Bailey Hongzhuang out, then wouldn't his efforts be in vain? The so-called draw seemed to be a draw, but everyone knew in their hearts that the winner was Bailey Hongzhuang. How could he let such a sharp-tongued brat win? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Chu Feihu indifferently, with a hint of ridicule in her eyes. She had already guessed that Chu Feihu would not agree to a draw, but in this way, Chu Feihu had dug a hole for himself. Bewitching and the other two, who were standing behind Bailey Hongzhuang, also had a faint smile on their faces. It seemed that the development of the situation was exactly as they had imagined. When Steward Sheen saw Chu Feihu being so stubborn, he secretly cursed in his heart. This old fellow was really stupid. He was already helping Chu Feihu by saying that it was a draw. Otherwise, if he judged the result based on the number of pills, then Chu Feihu would definitely lose. It was a pity that this old fellow who relied on his seniority did not realize the true situation in front of him. He thought that all the advantages were on his side. Steward Sheen, since Master Chu is unwilling to accept the result of this draw, then according to the number of pills, the winner should be me, right? Seeing that it was about time, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly opened her mouth and said. When these words came out, Chu Feihu's expression couldn't help but change. How can this be? Seeing that Chu Feihu finally knew how to be anxious, Steward Sheen also felt a burst of joy in his heart. This old fellow should know the meaning of his words now. He always thought that he was amazing, but he didn't know that the scales of victory had already tilted. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Why not? Since we are both refining fusion replenishing pills, in these 3 days, I have refined more fusion replenishing pills than you, whose alchemy skills are more outstanding, should be able to tell a glance. The faces of the people present became very interesting. Before, almost everyone believed that Bailey Hongzhuang would only leave with her tail between her legs. They did not think that the situation would be completely reversed. Instead, it was Bailey Hongzhuang who forced Chu Feihu into a desperate situation. The degree of excitement was really amazing. After Lu Mingxiu saw Bailey Hongzhuang's methods, he also understood why he had fallen into the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang before. This person seemed arrogant, but every word she said was enough to rely on. She was obviously weak in front of Chu Feihu, but she was able to make Chu Feihu angry to the extreme, but he was helpless. Just this point alone was absolutely impossible without enough wisdom. In fact, today's situation was originally an unsolvable situation. However, Bailey Hongzhuang cleverly resolved it and even gained the upper hand. Chapter 31:28. Steward Sheen also looked at Chu Feihu coldly. Just now, he wanted to speak up for Chu Feihu, but Chu Feihu rejected him. Now that he had fallen into such a situation, it was Chu Feihu's own business. Although he was unwilling to offend Chu Feihu, it did not mean that he was afraid of Chu Feihu. On the contrary, he felt that it was a good choice for Chu Feihu to leave the demon refining tower now. Perhaps the alchemists and doctors would not be as foul as they were now. Chu Feihu's face suddenly became awkward. Now he reacted, but the words had already been spoken, and it was impossible to take them back. What's more, letting him admit that he and Bailey Hongzhuang had a tie was also unacceptable. After thinking for a while, Chu Feihu finally came up with a good idea. He immediately said, "Number 18, we agreed to see whose healing medicine is better. This has nothing to do with the quantity. Logically speaking, we should let everyone judge whose healing medicine is better. Do you think I'm old and muddle-headed and want to confuse quality with quantity?" At this time, Chu Feihu could only be thick-skinned. After all, it was much better to be shameless than to admit defeat. Following Chu Feihu's words, Shenghuan Yingying could not help but mock. I really don't know what he wants to say. At this moment, it was not only Shenghuan Yingying who had such thoughts. The others were also speechless at Chu Feihu's lame words. No matter what, Chu Feihu was a respected elder in the demon refining tower. Now, he was taking advantage of the younger generation. Just this point alone was enough to put him at a disadvantage. Not only Chu Feihu, but the alchemists and doctors who came with Chu Feihu also felt ashamed after seeing this scene. However, this situation was very different from what they had imagined. From the moment Bailey Hongzhuang took out the fusion replenishing pill, their plan had been completely ruined. After that, they walked step by step until now. Even they themselves did not know how it had developed. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Chu Feihu indifferently. Her expression was filled with speechlessness. "Master Chu, now that things have come to this, just tell me what you want to do." Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's helpless words, Chu Feihu only felt that his old face was about to be completely lost. Wasn't this equivalent to him taking advantage of the younger generation at his age? After such a commotion, almost everyone felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's bearing was much stronger than Chu Feihu's. If it was Chu Feihu, under such circumstances, he would definitely be unreasonable. And although Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude was arrogant before, she did not force him to be forced into a desperate situation. At this point, he could only admit that it was a tie. At this point, he could only admit that it to admit to the result. At this point, he could only to admit that it was a tie. He to himself, she, to himself, to himself, to himself, to himself, to her, to him, to himself. However, all of you are refining fusion replenishing pills. How can the effects be distinguished? Steward Qin frowned. He did not understand what Chu Feihu was doing at all. Didn't he come back to the same place after going around in circles? Chapter 31:29. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang curiously. They did not understand what Bailey Hongzhuang meant by her words. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into an indifferent and shallow smile. I think that everyone should know that even if it is the same pill, the effect may not be the same. Due to the different levels of each alchemist, there is a certain difference in the effects of the pills they refine. Therefore, even if Master Chu and I are both refining the fusion replenishing pill, the effects will definitely be different. Therefore, it is not difficult to determine the winner. As soon as these words were spoken, Chu Feihu's eyes lit up. He secretly laughed in his heart. Bailey Hongzhuang had really dug a hole for him to jump into. Number 18 is right. There will be some differences in the pills refined by every alchemist. We can use this to determine the winner. He had been an alchemist for so many years, and he was the best alchemist in the entire demon refining tower. Therefore, the effect of the fusion replenishing pill he refined would definitely be the best. He didn't know who was secretly helping Bailey Hongzhuang, but he believed that the other party's alchemy skills were definitely incomparable to his. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They had heard of this problem before, but most of the medicinal effects of the pills were not very different. It would not be easy to judge. At this moment, Steward Sheen began to wonder. Bailey Hongzhuang had clearly gained the upper hand, so why did she take the initiative to bring up this matter? Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang was confident that the effect of her fusion replenishing pill was better? After the previous incident, Steward Sheen had already determined that Bailey Hongzhuang was a smart person. She would not dig a trap for herself and jump into it, but this was a bit too confident. Shangguan Yingying and Wen Xiren's eyes also revealed a hint of surprise. They really did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to make such a decision, but after seeing Bewitching's indifferent expression, they felt relieved. Bailey Hongzhuang must have the confidence to win. Steward Sheen, number 18 and I have reached an agreement on this matter. What do you think? A faint smile appeared in Chu Feihu's eyes. Now, there was a glimmer of hope. He thought that he could only admit that both sides were tied, but he did not expect that the situation would turn around and he would once again gain the advantage. Hearing this, Steward Sheen could only nod his head. Then, according to your thoughts, how should we implement this? It's very simple. As long as we sell this fusion replenishing pill to all the cultivators, everyone will understand after using it. After all, the masses will not lie. Without waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to speak, Chu Feihu spoke out his thoughts. He did not want to give Bailey Hongzhuang the slightest chance to go back on her words. Number 18. What do you think of Master Chu's suggestion? Steward Sheen asked. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, I have no objections. Let's do it this way. Chu Feihu's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. He did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to agree so readily. He actually had a bad premonition in his heart, but he quickly dispelled this idea, because no matter from which angle, Bailey Hongzhuang had no chance of winning. Chapter 3130. As a higher-up of the Demon Refining Tower, Steward Sheen was very familiar with handling all of this. After knowing the thoughts of Bailey Hongzhuang and Chu Feihu, he quickly came up with a method for the competition. That was to sell the fusion replenishing pills refined by Bailey Hongzhuang and Chu Feihu, but record down the names of the cultivators who bought the fusion replenishing pills. A month later, these cultivators who had used the fusion replenishing pills would come back to vote and choose the side that they felt had a better effect. Although this method would have some drawbacks, it was the fairest method that could be thought of so far. Although the value of the fusion replenishing pill was very high, the cultivators who came to the Demon Refining Tower were all above the Purple Realm. They had seen many treasures, and it was not like they had not taken the fusion replenishing pill before. Therefore, it should be possible to compare the effects. If they really couldn't tell, then they could only see which side everyone supported more. Since everyone is helping us to determine the winner this time, I will sell all the fusion replenishing pills at half price. Chu Feihu said with a smile. He was very satisfied that today's matter had developed to this point. With his wealth, it was not a big deal to earn less money. On the contrary, this way, he would be able to gain the favor of more people. Following Chu Feihu's words, many of the cultivators present couldn't help but exclaim. The fiery light in their eyes became even more intense. To be able to buy the fusion replenishing pill at a normal price, this was an opportunity that they would never have on a normal day. Bewitching and the others looked at Chu Feihu's method of buying people's hearts and couldn't help but frown. This old fellow said that he was smart and would often do stupid things, but this method of buying people's hearts was indeed not bad. Number 18, what about you? When Steward Sheen saw that Chu Feihu had taken the lead in making such a decision, he couldn't help but look at number 18. In this situation, he was afraid that number 18 would have to lower the price. However, what Bailey Hongzhuang said surprised Steward Sheen once again. Only pills with insufficient effects need to be sold at a reduced price. Obviously, my healing pills don't need to be sold at a reduced price. This simple sentence showed Bailey Hongzhuang's arrogance and confidence. Everyone was surprised, but after seeing the confident light on Bailey Hongzhuang's face, the words that they wanted to ridicule were stuck in their throats. Confidence without any foundation was naturally mocked, but if one had enough strength, then this could only be said to be arrogance. Bailey Hongzhuang was very confident in the pills she had refined. All this time, the effect of the pills refined by her had been 20% better than those refined by ordinary alchemists, which was why she was confident that she would definitely win this competition. Chu Feihu's action of lowering the price did indeed gain the favor of many people. But in the end, everyone still relied on the effects of the medicinal pills to speak. Lowering the price was just devaluing the value of his own pills. Chu Feihu, who was originally full of smiles, heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words. His face suddenly turned ugly. Bailey Hongzhuang's ability to cut a knife was really not bad. With a cold snort in his heart, Chu Feihu was too lazy to bother with Bailey Hongzhuang. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang would taste the bitter fruit. Chapter 31:31. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, "Sorry to trouble you." After that, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Bei Chun looked at each other and suddenly did not continue to stay at the counter. They turned and left together. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three leave like this, everyone couldn't help but be surprised. Although the four of them had been in the Magic Tower for quite some time, based on their attitude, they didn't lose out to Chu Feihu at all. Compared to the various kinds of momentum that Chu Feihu had created before, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's calm response made them seem even better. When Chu Feihu and the other alchemists and doctors saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were actually so arrogant, the malicious light in their eyes couldn't help but become more intense. No matter how they looked at it, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three should be standing there and watching them leave first. They didn't expect that the situation would be completely reversed. This kind of difference made them feel very unhappy. In the next second, Chu Feihu also left with a gloomy face. After today's competition, he had lost face in the end. He could only wait for the final result to come out before he properly ridiculed Bailey Hongzhuang. When the time came, he would definitely return everything that had happened today back to Bailey Hongzhuang. Sweet Dream looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's figure as she left, and the admiration in her heart became even stronger. This kind of Bailey Hongzhuang was really too elegant. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Chu Feihu left, the cultivators present turned their attention to the counter. Although Chu Feihu and Bailey Hongzhuang had brought a lot of pills, there were only a total of 40 pills. There were too many monks and too little gruel. They couldn't miss this opportunity, especially Chu Feihu's nourishing pill. Half price was undoubtedly the best deal. Within a few minutes of the sale, Chu Feihu's healing medicine had already been sold out by a group of cultivators. Those who did not manage to get their hands on it could only blame themselves for not being fast enough and missing out on such a great opportunity. Xiao Han was also standing in front of the counter. However, he did not buy Chu Feihu's nourishing pill. Instead, he bought Bailey Hongzhuang's nourishing pill. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang in person today, he was even more curious about Bailey Hongzhuang. He felt that this Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely not arrogant for no reason. On the contrary, Bailey Hongzhuang definitely had her own abilities. He wanted to see the source of Bailey Hongzhuang's confidence. He wanted to see how this fusion replenishing pill was different from ordinary fusion replenishing pills. Lu Mingxiu also bought Bailey Hongzhuang's nourishing pill. However, he did not buy it himself. Instead, he found someone to buy it for him. He also wanted to know the true strength of Bailey Hongzhuang. After Chu Feihu's nourishing pill was sold out, the other cultivators could only buy Bailey Hongzhuang's nourishing pill. Although it was sold at the original price, it was a pill that was rarely seen. As long as one had enough spirit stones, it was extremely good to buy a set and store it in case of an emergency. In this demon training tower, everyone's life was tied to their waistband. The usage rate of this kind of pill was extremely high. As soon as she returned to the room, Shangguan Yingying could not help but let out a sigh of relief. She poured a cup of tea and sat on the chair to drink it. Chapter 31:32. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, and her angular face softened a little. She said, "Chu Feihu can't threaten me in front of so many people today, right? That old man cares too much about his image. He's destined to be at a disadvantage." Haha. Chu Feihu didn't expect us to take out the harmonizing, nourishing pill. Thinking back to his expression just now, it's so interesting. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai kept jumping around, and their faces were full of excitement. This was all thanks to them. Thinking about the results they achieved today, they were very satisfied. Speaking of which, Hong Zhuang, you sold the harmonizing, nourishing pill at the original price. Won't you be at a disadvantage in this aspect? When Xiren's handsome and elegant face showed a hint of seriousness. Overall, they had the upper hand today, but Chu Feihu's lowering of the price made him a little worried. If Chu Feihu succeeded in buying people's hearts, then everyone would vote for Chu Feihu during the voting, and they would be at a disadvantage. Hearing this, Di Beichen was the first to shake his head. He said that won't happen. Xiren raised his eyebrows slightly and silently asked Di Beichen for the reason. Chu Feihu only had a dozen harmonizing, nourishing pills. Only a dozen cultivators took advantage of him. On the other hand, there were 30 cultivators who bought Hong Zhuang's harmonizing, nourishing pill. If you bought the harmonizing, nourishing pill at double the price, would you be willing to let others say that you wasted your money on something that was not worth it? Once this was said, when Xiren immediately understood. Then, he gave Bailey Hongzhuang a thumbs up. Brilliant. It's really brilliant. Everyone had the mentality of covering up their shortcomings. They would not be willing to let others say that they made the wrong decision. The more arrogant a person was, the more obvious this would be. Therefore, these cultivators would definitely not say that Bailey Hongzhuang's harmonizing, nourishing pill was bad. In this way, not only did they earn spirit stones, but they were also not at a disadvantage. It was really excellent. Moreover, the harmonizing, nourishing pill that I refined is better than the average harmonizing, nourishing pill. I believe these cultivators can tell. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was full of confidence. She had always been confident in the pills that she refined. Hongzhuang, I'm really admiring you more and more. Shangguan Yingying's face was full of smiles. Chu Feihu must think that he's going to win. When the real result is, it will be exciting. I'm actually looking forward to the time when those 200,000 spirit stones will fall into our pockets. It'll be so satisfying. A huge amount. It was a huge sum. Listening to Xiren's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes couldn't help but show a strange color. 200,000 spirit stones. What does that mean? Mean that. Xiren smiled faintly and winked. Ask Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but look at Di Beichen. Di Beichen said, there was a bet before. Your odds were 1 to 20. I bet 10,000 spirit stones. If we win, we'll get 200,000 spirit stones. Where's the bet? Can we continue to bet now? Her ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with excitement. Earning spirit stones like this was much faster than refining pills. Di Beichen shook his head and said, it stopped yesterday. It's impossible to place another bet. Chapter 31-33. Since Bailey Hongzhuang had the Chaos Ring, it was the safest place to store the spirit stones. Therefore, most of the spirit stones they earned were stored in the Chaos Ring. Di Beichen and the others only had a total of 10,000 spirit stones on them. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang had been in seclusion refining pills, so Di Beichen and the others had used up all their spirit stones on a bet. No matter what, we've made a profit this time. Shangguan Yingying smiled faintly. Compared to the 1,000 spirit stones they had on them when they first arrived, 200,000 spirit stones was a huge sum. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, her dark eyes reflecting a deep smile. That's true. Once Chu Feihu loses, I'm afraid he'll really die from anger. After chatting for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others once again went to the oceanic world. The final result would take some time, so they naturally couldn't stay in the house and wait for the news. The most important thing was to make the best use of their time to cultivate. In the oceanic world, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other ship was always moving in the same direction. After their experience in the desert world, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen understood that this world was not infinitely vast. If they could adapt to everything in the oceanic world, they might be able to move on to the next world. This was what they were looking forward to the most. However, with their current strength, this oceanic world could be said to be extremely dangerous. Wanting to leave the oceanic world was obviously not something that could be done in a short period of time. During the process of cultivation, Xiren and Shangguan Yingying had broken through to the 4th level of the Purple Realm one after another. They had already felt that they were not far away from breaking through, and now they had finally succeeded in breaking through. However, after the two of them broke through, everyone naturally noticed that Di Beichen's speed had slowed down a little. Hong Zhuang, if Beichen's physique can't be improved, will always suppress the increase of his cultivation. On this day, while Di Beichen was cultivating, Xiren could not help but walk to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His elegant face was filled with indescribable concern and worry. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Ever since his cursed physique acted up, although I used the sacred frost lotus to awaken him, the effects of the cursed physique did not disappear. So during this period of time, his cultivation has been suppressed. As his cultivation becomes higher, the effects of the suppression will become more obvious. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiren's physique is, Beichen was originally the strongest in our team's strongest. But. Bailey Hongzhuang pursed her lips and said, Beichen's mental endurance is very strong. He has long been mentally prepared for this kind of thing. You don't have to worry. Now that we even have the Amethyst Dragon Emperor Ginseng, we are only missing the Tears of Cold. Hongzhuang, what do you plan to do? Xiren's expression was solemn. He did not want to see his good brother become like this. Unfortunately, with their strength, it was not easy to obtain the Tears of Cold. Chapter 31-34. Although this magic refining tower is located on the magic refining island and seems to have no connection with the other islands of Penglai Island, the truth is that they are inextricably linked. When Xiren's eyes flashed with a wise and far-sighted light, I have already asked Sweet Dream to pass on the news of the Penglai Island auction house to us. As long as the Tears of Frostfire appear, she will definitely inform us immediately. Hearing Xiren's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also lit up. This is undoubtedly the best. However, since someone is deliberately collecting it, the possibility of the Golden Flame auction house auctioning it is not high. No matter what, this is also an opportunity. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Right now, they could only use their own channels. They could not easily miss out on any opportunity. From this day onwards, Bailey Hongzhuang, Xiren, and Shangguan Yingying had a tacit understanding to rarely mention anything about their cultivation progress. However, Di Beichen was never a stupid person. He could clearly feel everyone's good intentions, so he also maintained the same tacit understanding. Master, if this continues, won't Di Beichen's cultivation be left far behind by you guys? The three beasties could not help but worry about Di Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two had already broken through for half a month, but Di Beichen still had not made the slightest movement. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. Di Beichen's cultivation progress is indeed being suppressed. However, I believe that his cultivation will not be wasted. Once he transforms into the heavenly physique, all the accumulated benefits from the cultivation chain will definitely explode. In fact, she had only met one cursed physique cultivator in her previous life. She did not have a deep understanding of it. She only knew that the other party's cultivation progress was extremely fast after the transformation. The heavenly physique was originally an extremely powerful physique. Later on, the other party also made a name for himself in the Shengxian continent. She believed that Di Beichen was the same. Hearing this, the three beasties could not help but look at each other. The worry in their eyes did not dissipate. If Di Beichen could successfully transform into the heavenly physique, they naturally would not have to worry. However, they did not know when Di Beichen would be able to transform his physique. If he could not transform his physique in this lifetime, that would be the worst thing that could happen. We only have about a year's time. We will definitely think of a way. Bailey Hongzhuang said with a faint smile. Her pitch-black bright phoenix eyes flashed with a strong sense of determination. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were wholeheartedly cultivating in seclusion, many cultivators in the MO refining pagoda also used the Rongbu Dan, and some voices of discussion gradually came out. I heard from the cultivators who took the thawing, nourishing pill that the thawing, nourishing pill refined by Chu Feihu and number 18 seemed to be more effective. For real? I don't know either. However, I've already heard a few people talking about this. I don't think it's fake. As the rumors gradually spread, the majority of the cultivators in the magic refining tower felt that these cultivators were joking. It was simply impossible. However, as the number of cultivators using pills increased, the rumors became more and more widespread. Chapter 31-35. This rumor gradually spread to the ears of Chu Feihu and the others. When Chu Feihu heard the news, he immediately slammed the table angrily and roared, "What kind of joke is this? They actually said that the effect of the fusion replenishing pill refined by number 18 is better than mine? This is simply a fantasy story." He knew very well about the fusion replenishing pill he refined. He had refined it many times over the years, so it could be said that he was very familiar with it and could not find any fault with it. The alchemists in the entire demon refining tower did not dare to say that the effect of the fusion replenishing pill they refined was better than his. A mere brat who had just come to the demon refining tower dared to say that the effect was better than his? This was simply nonsense. Not only Chu Feihu, but the other alchemists and doctors also felt that it was very laughable after hearing this news. This was simply impossible. This rumor is a bit too ridiculous. As long as you use your brain to think about it, you will know that it is absolutely impossible. In my opinion, that brat is not an alchemist at all. He is just worried that he will fail, so he deliberately mystifies things. I don't know where he got some fusion replenishing pills and said that he refined them himself. Master Chu, could it be that number 18 deliberately spread this rumor because she was afraid that she would fail, so she deliberately misled the public? A group of alchemists and doctors gathered together. They did not even need to consider the authenticity of this rumor, because all of this was definitely fake. As soon as these words came out, Chu Feihu's eyes could not help but freeze. A malicious light quietly appeared. If that is the case, then this brat is really playing a good trick. Number 18 is very good at these things. Didn't we already see this half a month ago? Go and help me check if it was that brat who spread the rumor. If it is, see how I will teach him a lesson. Chu Feihu's voice was calm, but the anger in his eyes betrayed his emotions. After hearing this rumor, not only Chu Feihu and the others, but Steward Qin also felt that it was very interesting. Ever since he heard that Bailey Hongzhuang decided to compete with Chu Feihu in the effect of the fusion replenishing pill, he felt that this matter was very strange. Bailey Hongzhuang did not seem like someone who would make such an unwise move. Now that such news had spread, it was really unusual. Sweet Dream, have you noticed young Master D's movements recently? Steward Qin looked at Sweet Dream and asked. In this magic refining pagoda, the person who was most familiar with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three was Sweet Dream. Thus, he had specially transferred Sweet Dream from the second floor to this floor. Sweet Dream shook her head and said, ever since he took out the nourishing pill half a month ago, young Master D and the others have been cultivating in seclusion in their rooms. They haven't come out for such a long time. Cultivating without leaving the house? Are you sure? Yes, young Master D and the others have always focused on cultivation. Previously, they would only come out occasionally when they were selling healing medicine. Other than that, they have always been cultivating in seclusion in the house. According to young Master D, she is only selling the healing medicine in exchange for the spirit stones she needs for her cultivation. She doesn't want to use it to make money, Sweet Dream said slowly. Chapter 31-36. However, if all of this was true, then the actions of Chu Feihu and the others were a bit funny. They had spent so much effort just to drive Bailey Hongzhuang out of the magic refining pagoda. But Bailey Hongzhuang's original intention was not to compete with them in the magic refining pagoda's pill market. She only wanted to earn some money to support her own cultivation. Such a person was not a threat to Chu Feihu and the others at all. As long as she earned enough spirit stones, she would not show her face for a long time. However, Chu Feihu and the others had made such a big deal out of it. Even though they had personally made a move, they had still lost face. According to your previous judgment, do you think what young Master D said is true? Steward Qin slowly asked. Maybe what Bailey Hongzhuang said was just a pretense. Sweet Dream nodded. I think so. Usually, they don't care about the sales of this healing medicine at all. Moreover, when I went to find them, they were often in the middle of cultivation. They would only notice the news that I sent over after a few days. So you're saying that the news that has been spreading recently was not deliberately spread by them? Steward Qin raised his eyebrows. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, then it would be the true feelings of the cultivators. In this way, this matter became even more interesting. Could it be that the effect of the fusion replenishment pill refined by Bailey Hongzhuang was really different? One had to know that Bailey Hongzhuang's price was half of Chu Feihu's. Logically speaking, everyone should be on Chu Feihu's side. How could there be such a reversal? I can guarantee that it was definitely not young Master D and the others who spread it. Sweet Dream vowed. Ever since the fusion replenishment pill was sold out, I've always wanted to give them the spirit stones I earned. However, they've always been in closed-door cultivation, so I haven't even been able to hand over the spirit stones. Steward Qin nodded slightly. He did not doubt this point. In fact, according to the information he received, no one had seen Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three in the past few days. After Steward Qin understood all of this, Chu Feihu and the others also received the same information. You're saying that they've been in seclusion all this time and haven't come out? Chu Feihu's eyes widened. His weathered face was filled with astonishment and shock. This was completely different from what he had imagined. According to the information we have gathered, that is indeed the case. In the past half a month, number 18 and the others have not stepped out of the house. There is no movement at all. I don't know how this rumor came about. An alchemist frowned, as if he could not figure out this matter at all. Could it be that the healing medicine that number 18 took out is really effective? That's impossible. Chu Feihu raised his hand and directly rejected this possibility. Don't tell me you think that the fusion replenishing pill refined by that little brat will be more effective than mine. Chu Feihu's gaze swept across the crowd in front of him. Everyone lowered their heads and shook their heads. Only then did Chu Feihu withdraw his gaze in satisfaction. Even if the four of them didn't spread the rumor personally, they must have spread it through someone else. You must help me find the source. Chu Feihu ordered. Yes. Chapter 31-37. Just as Chu Feihu and the others were looking for the source of the rumor was getting more and more popular. As the time for the results to be announced got closer and closer, everyone was more and more interested in the effects of the nourishing pill. This result was obviously out of everyone's expectations, so there was more and more heated discussion. Everyone began to sigh at Bailey Hongzhuang's miraculous abilities. Every time when everyone thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would never be able to make a comeback, Bailey Hongzhuang would always be able to make a beautiful comeback, stunning everyone's eyes. After Xiao Yihan used Bailey Hongzhuang's nourishing pill, his admiration for Bailey Hongzhuang grew stronger. With his status, he usually used a lot of pills. The nourishing pill was also a pill that he was very familiar with. However, after using Bailey Hongzhuang's nourishing pill, he clearly found that the effects of Bailey Hongzhuang's nourishing pill were much better than the ones he used before. It was at least 20% more effective. This feeling was no different from the first time he used Bailey Hongzhuang's healing medicine. It was very surprising, and the effects were simply amazing. It was only at this moment that he finally understood why Bailey Hongzhuang had always been so confident. It turned out that the things she took out were really different. Lu Mingxiu did not have a good impression of Bailey Hongzhuang at all. He originally wanted to take this opportunity to witness Bailey Hongzhuang's true abilities. If her abilities were not good enough, he could think of a way to turn the tables. However, after personally trying the effects of Bailey Hongzhuang's pill, he felt that it was very strange. He did not want to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang's nourishing pill was good, but the truth was right in front of him. The effects of Bailey Hongzhuang's nourishing pill were really good. He wasn't an alchemist. If it was just a slight difference, he wouldn't be able to tell it all. But now he could clearly feel it. This proved that the effect of Bailey Hongzhuang's thawing replenishing pill was much better than ordinary thawing replenishing pills. When Chu Feihu discovered that the rumor was no longer under his control, his expression became extremely ugly. He kept pacing around the room, thinking about how he could turn the situation around. Otherwise, once the rumor spread, would he really have to leave the magic tower? He had never even considered this possibility. Master Chu, why don't we just go and bribe them? One of the alchemists couldn't help but suggest. With their current situation, there was really no other way. Chu Feihu's hands couldn't help but tremble when he heard this suggestion. An indescribable sense of humiliation rose in his heart. He had always prided himself on his outstanding alchemy skills. In this aspect, he had never admitted defeat to anyone. But now, he had to use this method to deal with a junior who was only in his 20s. This was simply trampling on his self-esteem. I'm afraid there's no other way now. We have to consider the big picture. The alchemist sighed. They also felt very uncomfortable with this result. However, if they didn't do this, they wouldn't be able to bear the final result. Forget it, let's do this first. Chu Feihu slowly closed his eyes. After so many years, his thoughts had never been so complicated. Chapter 31-38. However, just as Chu Feihu and the others were trying to buy people's hearts, they realized that it wouldn't work at all. In order to ensure the fairness of this competition, Steward Qin had already prohibited all actions of bribery. If it was said that Bailey Hongzhuang's previous performance was not enough to make Steward Qin stand on her side, but after the effects of the fusion replenishing pill spread out, he became more and more interested in Bailey Hongzhuang. Compared to an old fellow like Chu Feihu who was difficult to control, Bailey Hongzhuang, who focused on cultivation, was more suitable for the existence of the magic refining pagoda. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang did not care about the changes in power in the magic refining pagoda, nor did she want to monopolize the entire market, much less use it to threaten him. Chu Feihu had stayed in the magic refining pagoda for so many years, and Steward Qin had already felt that this area was getting out of his control. On the contrary, once Chu Feihu led the alchemists and doctors to protest together, he often had no other choice. If he could take advantage of this opportunity to kick Chu Feihu away, this seemed to be a good decision. Although Chu Feihu's alchemy skills were indeed outstanding, he did not feel that kicking away a disobedient alchemist was a great loss. In the blink of an eye, the 1-month deadline had arrived. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 came out of seclusion on time on this day. They did not deliberately try to understand what had happened during this period of time. Today, they just happened to go and take a look at the results. The entire magic refining pagoda was abnormally concerned about this matter. So on this day, it was the same as a month ago when Bailey Hongzhuang and Chu Feihu took out the fusion replenishing pill. Many cultivators gathered in front of the counter, and the number was only a lot more than a month ago. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 arrived at the counter, they saw that it was already packed to the brim. However, when the cultivators saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 appear, they all tacitly made way for them, allowing them to walk unimpeded to the front of the counter. Chapter 31-39. I'm afraid Master Chu has already expected this final result, so he doesn't dare to come now. That's true. With Chu Feihu's position in the magic refining tower, if he really loses to number 18, I'm afraid he himself won't be able to accept this result. I feel that this number 18 is a rising star. Based on the strength she has displayed so far, she doesn't lose to Chu Feihu at all. Furthermore, she doesn't have Chu Feihu's attitude of taking advantage of her seniority. We can't buy enough healing medicine in the magic refining tower. Isn't it because Chu Feihu deliberately did it? This number 18 is much simpler and more to my liking. Everyone was discussing animatedly, each with their own thoughts. However, everyone was looking forward to the final result today. One of the two sides would definitely leave the magic refining tower. Not long after, Chu Feihu appeared with a group of alchemists and doctors. Compared to the overbearing attitude he had when he appeared a month ago, Chu Feihu was clearly not in a good mood today. His face was taut all the way. "Master Chu, you're here." Steward Qin greeted with a smile. Chu Feihu nodded his head indifferently, ignoring Steward Qin's smile. He felt that the reason why he had fallen into such a situation had a lot to do with Steward Qin. If he could bribe someone before the 1-month deadline, then it wouldn't be a problem to turn all of this around. However, Steward Qin suddenly stopped him from doing so, which naturally caused him to be unhappy. He even faintly felt that this matter was most likely done by Bailey Hongzhuang and Steward Qin, because this was the only way to explain it. Seeing that Chu Feihu did not buy his words, Steward Qin did not care at all. In any case, Chu Feihu was going to leave the magic refining tower today, so he should not need to see this old fellow's arrogant face in the future. Since everyone is already here, let's start the voting. Steward Qin waved his hand, and Sweet Dream and a few other staff members immediately brought out the voting board. I hope that all cultivators can vote according to the specific effects of this fusion replenishing pill. Do not vote recklessly because of your own emotions. Before voting, Steward Qin could not help but remind him. Hearing Steward Qin's words, the ridicule in Chu Feihu's eyes became even more intense. He understood that Steward Qin wanted to use this opportunity to kick him away, but he would definitely not let Steward Qin do as he wished. His position in the magic refining tower was already deeply rooted. Even if Steward Qin wanted to kick him away, it would not be an easy task. Xiao Han was the first to vote for Bailey Hongzhuang. He had always been magnanimous. To tell the truth, Bailey Hongzhuang's fusing nourishing pill was indeed very effective. Chapter 3140. Bailey Hongzhuang had absolute confidence in the effect of the fusion replenishing pill she had refined. However, she had been in seclusion for the past month and did not know much about the outside world. She believed that as long as Chu Feihu did not play any tricks behind her back, the final winner would definitely be her. Especially when she saw the complicated expression on Chu Feihu's face when he arrived, she felt a little relieved. If Chu Feihu had secretly bribed someone, he should be extremely arrogant. Every time Sweet Dream read out a new vote, everyone's heart could not help but skip a beat. It was not until more than 30 votes were called out that everyone realized that Bailey Hongzhuang and Chu Feihu were in a stalemate. The votes of the two were closely following each other. Every time one of them surpassed the other would overtake them in the next moment. It was precisely because it was difficult to determine the winner that everyone was even more curious about the situation. Their hearts were hanging tightly in their throats. Chu Feihu, who was originally in an extremely bad mood, looked a little better after seeing this scene. It seemed that the previous rumors were probably just rumors. Not so many people believed that Bailey Hongzhuang's fusion replenishing pill was effective. If this situation continued, he might still be able to win. However, the results of the voting left everyone dumbfounded. Number 18 has received 1 vote. Number 18 has received 1 vote. Number 18 has received 1 vote. All the remaining votes went to Bailey Hongzhuang, allowing her votes to quickly overtake Chu Feihu's, making the latter unable to catch up. At this time, every time Sweet Dream read out the votes, Chu Feihu's face darkened. By the time Sweet Dream finished reading out all the votes, Chu Feihu's face was already as black as the bottom of a pot. The previous joy had completely dissipated. The effect of this face slapping was stronger than any other method. In the end, all the votes went to Bailey Hongzhuang. What the hell was this? Bailey Hongzhuang glanced to the final votes. Chu Feihu had 18 votes, while she had 28 votes. She had 10 more votes than Chu Feihu. This result was not out of her expectations. As long as both parties did not buy the nourishing pill from both sides, they would naturally think that their nourishing pill was more effective. However, she had taken out a total of 30 fusion nourishing pills, but there were only 28 votes. This proved that the two cultivators who bought her fusion nourishing pills thought that Xu Feihu's fusion nourishing pills were better than hers. Why was that? Lu Mingxu looked coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. He had voted for Xu Feihu without hesitation, but he did not expect that he still could not change the situation. The result of the vote is very clear now. Everyone knows the result. Steward Qin slowly spoke, but his gaze quietly fell on Xu Feihu. There was no need to continue speaking. Xu Feihu's expression was livid as he said, "I don't believe this result. It must be you guys messing with me. Otherwise, how could I lose to a brat?" No matter what, he would not accept such an outcome. "Master Chu, you were the one who suggested this method. Now that the results are out, what do you mean by that?" Steward Qin frowned. Xu Feihu's level of difficulty was still the same as before. As a result, he started to be shameless. Chapter 31:41. Grandmaster Chu, what do you mean by that? The result is already very obvious. Previously, you kept finding excuses to refuse, so I listened to you and restarted the competition. Now that the results are out, you're acting shamelessly again. Even if your position in the Devil Refining Tower is very high, it doesn't seem right for you to be so shameless, right? Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. Her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with a touch of ridicule. Originally, she didn't have any enmity towards Xu Feihu. It was Xu Feihu who came looking for trouble. Now that things had developed to this point, Xu Feihu kept changing his mind. Naturally, she couldn't help but feel angry. I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen someone as shameless as him. When Xiren couldn't help but sigh. They didn't want to continue being troubled by this matter. They didn't think that Xu Feihu would continue to harp on this matter. This old man has cultivated for so many years. Could it be that he's used all his ability to cultivate his shamelessness? Shangguan Yingying was speechless. No matter what, Xu Feihu was an elder. But what was the situation now? He turned hostile just like that. All the promises they had made before were useless. No wonder all the alchemists and doctors in the Devil Refining Tower can't beat him. Anyone who has a bit of shame probably can't beat him, Bewitching said indifferently. When everyone heard Bewitching and the other two's words, the corners of their mouths couldn't help but twitch. They seemed to be unable to hold back their smiles. However, they had to admit that Bewitching and the other two were telling the truth. Even they couldn't stand Xu Feihu going back on his word. What do you juniors know? You're just spouting nonsense here. Xu Feihu scolded mercilessly. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were cold. Xu Feihu, you're the one who went back on your word. Now you're saying that we're wrong. Isn't this a little too laughable? This must be one of your schemes. This old man will definitely not compromise like this, Xu Feihu said angrily. At this moment, the anger that he had been suppressing for the past few days could not help but erupt. When he thought about how he had been forced into such a state with his status, he was unable to restrain his anger. You're crazy, Bailey Hongzhuang spat. The cultivators present were all dumbfounded. Such an unreasonable Xu Feihu made them speechless. Bailey Hongzhuang felt as if she was being pestered by a mad dog, making her speechless to the extreme. If you're willing to bet, then you have to accept your loss. Since you've lost, then scram out of the demonic training tower. This is our agreement from before. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's words were no longer polite. I'm very busy. I don't have so much time to waste like you. Being able to accompany you to this point is already my limit. If you want to continue wasting my time, I'm not interested in it at all. No wonder your alchemy skills can only reach such a level at such an old age. If you have the time to chase away alchemists who are stronger than you, why don't you use it to improve your alchemy skills? That way, you won't have to rush to suppress and chase away outstanding alchemists when they appear. However, Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xu Feihu indifferently. The disdain in her eyes could not be more obvious. I'm afraid you'll only be like this for the rest of your life. Ridicule. This was blatant mockery. Chapter 3142. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, a hint of surprise appeared in the eyes of everyone present, including Steward Qin. They really did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang, who had always been very silent, would actually speak so fiercely. The words that came out of her mouth shocked everyone to the point that they did not know what to say. All this time, Chu Feihu had been looking for trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang. In Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, she was actually just accompanying Chu Feihu to make trouble. And now, the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang was angry was not because of Chu Feihu's strength and shamelessness, but because she did not have the leisure and time to accompany Chu Feihu to continue making trouble. So, this competition that seemed extremely dangerous in the eyes of everyone was just a farce in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. Chu Feihu was also dumbfounded at this moment. Bailey Hongzhuang's sarcasm made him extremely unhappy, but Bailey Hongzhuang was too lazy to accompany him, which made him feel like he was just a child in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Chu Feihu could not help but look at the alchemist behind him. Those alchemists and doctors who usually helped him with his plans did not know what to say at this moment. The outcome had already been decided, and everything Chu Feihu was doing now was just a dying struggle. I don't accept this result. I definitely can't lose to her. Unless you can give me a more authoritative answer, I won't believe it. Chu Feihu had also calmed down at this moment. To him, if he really failed, it was not that he could not accept it. After all, this was because he was not capable enough, but what he could not accept was that he believed that all of this was a conspiracy between Bailey Hongzhuang and Steward Qin. He could leave the magic refining tower, but he could not leave in such an unclear manner. If he left by himself, then at least he could maintain his usual pride. Even if he went to the other islands of the Penglai Island, he would still be able to live a good life. On the contrary, if he was driven out because of his failure, then this would be a dark history, and he would not be able to raise his head at all. Since Grandmaster Chu is so unwilling to accept this result, I've invited 2 alchemists from the 100 Flowers Gate to judge the effects of this nourishing pill. What do you think? At this time, Steward Qin stood up and gave a suggestion. As Steward Qin's voice fell, the faces of everyone present changed. Chu Feihu's eyes became even gloomier. He knew that this matter was related to Steward Qin. This was clearly something that had been prepared for a long time. Bailey Hongzhuang was also a little surprised. Looking at the situation, Steward Qin was already prepared. The alchemists of 100 Flowers Gate did not go out often. It would take a certain amount of time to go to 100 Flowers Island to invite them back from the demonic refining pagoda. Obviously, Steward Qin had already invited them over. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Steward Qin explained with a smile, "This competition has caused a huge sensation in the demon refining pagoda. In order to show enough fairness, I specially went to the 100 Flowers Gate to invite 2 alchemists back. I hope young Master D doesn't mind." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment, then nodded. All right, she had enough confidence in her own nourishing pill, so she naturally didn't need to worry about anything. Furthermore, she could feel that Steward Qin's attitude this time was clearly more biased towards her side than the last time. Since that was the case, what did it matter if she gave Steward Qin face? Chapter 3143. Steward Qin gave Sweet Dream a look, and Sweet Dream immediately went to the back to invite the 2 alchemists of the 100 Flowers Gate over. This was the first time Bailey Hongzhuang had seen the alchemists of the 100 Flowers Gate. Both of them were wearing white clothes, and their expressions were somewhat arrogant. They faintly emitted a somewhat otherworldly aura, as if they were not stained with dust. However, Bailey Hongzhuang could tell at a glance that this so-called otherworldly aura was just a disguise. However, that arrogance was real, and Bailey Hongzhuang was not unfamiliar with this kind of arrogance at all. Thinking about how they had pretended to be alchemists of the 100 Flowers Gate on Emerald Island, they suddenly understood why Gao Hanshun had some doubts about them before. It was probably because their clothes were not right, but the arrogance and disdain they showed at that time was somewhat similar to the 2 alchemists of the 100 Flowers Gate in front of them. When Steward Sheen saw the two alchemists of the Hundred Flowers Gate, a polite smile appeared on his face, and the two alchemists also put away their arrogance when facing Steward Sheen. In front of the steward of the magic refining tower, their arrogance was nothing. Two alchemists, please help me verify which of these two fusion replenishing pills has the better effect. Steward Sheen took out two white porcelain bottles, which belonged to Bailey Hongzhuang and Steward Sheen. This was also what he had just obtained from the cultivators present. After all, not all cultivators had taken the fusion replenishing pills in the past month. At this time, Steward Sheen turned his head to look at Chu Feihu and said, "Master Chu, you can confirm for yourself whether this is your fusion replenishing pill." Hearing that, Chu Feihu walked to the counter with a cold expression. He looked at the nourishing pill in the white porcelain bottle. After confirming that it was indeed refined by him, he nodded. "That's right, it is indeed refined by me." Bailey Hongzhuang took a step forward and also confirmed that the other fusion replenishing pill was refined by her. "We guarantee on the reputation of the Hundred Flowers Gate that our inspection today will not be biased towards any side. Everything that is said must be the truth." The two alchemists of the Hundred Flowers Gate suddenly made a gesture, and a pious expression appeared on their faces. Seeing this, the tension and doubt on Chu Feihu's face completely disappeared. The disciples of the Hundred Flowers Gate had their own beliefs. When they said such words, it meant that they must be telling the truth and would not be tempted by any benefits. Bailey Hongzhuang did not understand what this meant, but from their pious expressions, she could tell that this was a promise that was exclusive to the disciples of the Hundred Flowers Gate. I didn't think that the disciples of the Hundred Flowers Gate would be so serious. They even said their oath. This means that they will definitely speak the truth. Steward Sheen should also want to use their witness to make Chu Feihu's mouth shut up completely. I originally thought that this matter was done by Steward Sheen and Bailey Hongzhuang, but now it seems that the situation is not like this. Let's continue watching. We'll know the real result very soon. When the time comes, it'll be wonderful that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.